Recovery efforts are still underway for those buried under the rubble in Gaza following the military strikes by Israel overnight that killed more than 400 Palestinians, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Several senior Hamas officials were reportedly killed in the attacks, along with women and children. The strikes are not the first since the ceasefire deal was reached in January, but they are certainly the most extensive and deadly as talks over the next stage of the ceasefire had stalled. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is defending his actions, calling the strikes a necessary condition for freeing the remaining hostages held by Gaza. He says these strikes are only the beginning. Joining me now is Daniel Levy, president of the U.S. Middle East Project and former Israeli peace negotiator. Sorry about that, Daniel. I was talking about the Institute of Peace in the previous segment. I wish we had a little bit of peace to talk about right now. Unfortunately, we're seeing this resumption of what Palestinians say is the genocide in Gaza. Tell me how it got to this moment that Israel has just shattered through the ceasefire and carried out this assault in the middle of Ramadan nonetheless.
Yeah, and of course, not just Palestinians saying this is a genocide. The International Court of Justice has ordered urgent provisional measures in a case brought by South Africa. Many of the leading global experts, also Jewish Holocaust experts, have called this a genocide. And precisely because of the kind of indiscriminate killing, collective punishment, prevention of humanitarian assistance that has been going on. That's why there's an International Criminal Court arrest warrant against Netanyahu. And here we are, back seeing these scenes. People have barely managed to pull their loved ones from the rubble of the first 16 months of this destruction, and they're back doing that again. And the story is quite simple, Ayman. The talks had agreed when we reached the first ceasefire deal on a framework, on a package, on a second and third phase, where they would conclude the details for a permanent ceasefire, including Israel's full military withdrawal from Gaza. Those talks were supposed to happen on day 16 of the first round. They still haven't really begun because Israel has consistently and categorically refused to adhere to what it agreed to. That's why the families of those Israelis still being held, the protesters inside Israel are out on the streets tonight, were out on the streets some hours ago, saying, Mr. Netanyahu, you've sabotaged this. You're threatening the lives, of course, not only of the Palestinians who he's targeting, but also of the Israelis still being held. And the big question was, where would the administration put its thumb on those scales? It looked like Trump was serious about a ceasefire. It appears that either he is so ideologically aligned with the Israeli leader, or he's been played again, as many American presidents have been in the past. And he has now green-lighted Israel's violation of the very agreement Trump was supposed to guarantee.
Take me inside the political dynamics inside Israel over this resumption of the war. We knew that some of the most extremist hardline elements, including Itamar Ben-Gvir, who had quit the government, would not rejoin the government unless the war resumed. That was a condition he said he had been told would happen by Prime Minister Netanyahu. The Prime Minister himself embroiled in all kinds of legal problems. He recently just fired the head of the Internal Security Service in Israel, the Shin Bet. Are any of those factors in why you think this war was suddenly relaunched?
Well, there's a degree of transparency to all this because the Israeli Prime Minister avoided this exact deal. The terms of the deal didn't change. He avoided it for months because he knew it was a political headache for him. For Netanyahu, permanent war serves his politics. Being the wartime leader serves his politics. Israel is still occupying parts of Lebanon, occupying large parts of Syria, carrying out strikes in the West Bank as well as now in Gaza. When the deal was agreed, the Prime Minister of Israel had a coalition crisis. Ben-Gvir, as you said, the head of the Jewish power faction, left. He was down to a tiny majority. And he has 12 days left, Mr. Netanyahu, according to Israeli law, to pass a budget, or the Knesset immediately goes to new elections. Now, maybe he would have passed the budget anyway, but his politics look so much easier when he's bombing Gaza because this Ben-Gvir faction have said they will rejoin the government. The coalition looks much more stable. the story that was the big crisis in Israel as of a few hours ago until this strike happened was over the firing, as you've said, of this Shin Bet, head of one of the security services, the possible firing of the attorney general. But this rallies the Netanyahu base, and it's all enabled by this permissive environment that existed already, as we discussed before, under the Biden administration. And it now seems to be gathering further steam with Trump. And we see also how isolated the U.S. is. You were just talking about USAID, the Institute for Peace. There's no country that is aligning with the way the U.S. is backing Israel, is lying for Israel in terms of what's happened, because we can all see what's gone on. At the UN Security Council today in New York, you saw America, a very lone voice yet again.
Let me go back to the point that you raised about Donald Trump and which one he is, an ideological stalwart ally of this extremist government in Israel, or is he like his predecessor or perhaps even previous American presidents being outmaneuvered by Israel? He talked about wanting to have a ceasefire. He talked about wanting to end the war in Gaza. He campaigned on it. Not that anyone necessarily believed him, but here we are after just a couple of weeks of this of his term, that he is already now being outmaneuvered by the Israelis who are launching this war and saying they're doing so with the blessing of the Americans. How do you assess which Donald Trump it is, which administration this is going to be?
Am I allowed for it to be both in my answer? Because I think what we can say is Donald Trump is not going to be the liberator of the Palestinians, the terminator of the occupation and apartheid under which Palestinians lived. But he could have been the guy, and this is consequential in itself, he could have been the guy to bring a lasting ceasefire in Gaza. Hugely meaningful given the 60,000 plus dead, given the significant suspicions of a genocide being undertaken there. He could still be, by the way. But at this moment, he has chosen not only to align with all the things we expected anyway, with the permissive environment for all the destruction taking place every day of the ceasefire, by the way, on the West Bank, forced displacement of 40,000 plus Palestinians, all the things we would expect domestically, most egregiously with the arrest and attempted deportation of Mahmoud Khalil at Colombia, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. He could be all those things, but yet still try and get this ceasefire. He seemed proud of the ceasefire. He said, I'm a guy of peace, not war. But at the moment, he's green-lighting the resumption of these strikes because he's allowed Netanyahu to make the weather.
And in that sense, he is no different than previous administrations who have failed to stand up to Israel to end this war and previous aggressions. Daniel Levy, thank you so much. It's great to see you as always.